Hello chess lovers, welcome back to my channel. What happens when the greatest tactician of his era walks straight into a calculation he cannot escape? In 1961, Mikhail Tal came to Bled with a fearsome reputation and a perfect score against the young Bobby Fischer. But in this game, Fischer shows his masterpiece with one of the most famous queen sacrifices. Let's take a look to the board. Bobby Fischer opened the game with pawn to e4. We have pawn to c5 by Mikhail Tal. Now the Sicilian opening is on the board. Knight to f3 by white. Knight to c6 by black. d4. Black captures on d4. White knight captures on d4. And we have pawn to e6 by black. Knight to c3. And Tal moves his queen to c7. We enter the Taimanov, also known as the Paulsen Sicilian, a highly flexible setup. g3 now by Bobby Fischer. By avoiding the main theoretical battles, Fischer steers the game into a structure where he can dictate the pace and reduce Tal's tactical opportunities. We have now knight to f6 by black. The first critical moment. That is not the best move, against Fischer a losing move. The correct continuation was pawn to a6 in this position, preventing what is about to follow. Bobby Fischer moves his knight from d4 to b5. The black queen is forced to move, and white gains a valuable tempo. The black queen moves back to the back rank. Not a good square for the queen. If black played instead of queen to a5, we have bishop to d2, queen to d8, white bishop to f4, pawn to e5, and bishop g5 by white. If you look to this position, you can see easily that white is much better. Back to our position. Here Bobby Fischer plays bishop to f4. We have knight to e5 by Mikhail Tal. That is a mistake. A better alternative is instead of pawn to e5. In this case we would have bishop to g5, a6 by black, bishop captures on f6, a pawn captures on b5, and white bishop to g5. And white has only a very small advantage. Back to our position. Now we have bishop to e2. This is a good move that Tal may be underestimated. It keeps an eye on the b5 square. We have bishop to c5 by black, and the white bishop captures on e5. The black queen recaptures, pawn to f4, the queen retreats to b8, and now we have pawn to e5 by white. With this move, white establishes a massive space advantage. We have pawn to a6 by Tal. If black moves his knight back to g8, then white moves his knight to e4, bishop to e7, queen to d2. After knight b5 to d6 with check, and queenside castling will follow. That is winning for white. Back to our position. Bobby Fischer captures the knight on f6. Tal captures the knight on b5. White pawn captures on g7. Black rook to g8. Knight to e4. The bishop moves back to e7. We have queen to d4 by white. Rook a4. Knight to f6 with check. the bishop captures on f6. Black is forced to capture the knight on f6. The white queen recaptures. And now we have queen to c7 and queenside castling by white. Fischer castles straight into what appears to be danger. The threat of rook captures on a2 looks dangerous. But Fischer's calculation runs far deeper. Now the black rook captures on a2. Fischer moves his king to b1. The black rook moves back to a6. Black cannot play rook to a5. For example, then we have bishop to h5, d5 by black. White rook captures on d5. The black pawn has to recapture. And then we have rook to e1 check. This position is absolutely lost for black. Back to our position. Also bad is the queen move. For example, queen moves to a5. Then we will have pawn to b3 by white. And then follows bishop h5. And also the position for black is lost. Back to our position. The white bishop captures now on b5. Rook to b6. Bishop to e3. A very good move. The pressure on black's position continues to increase. We have pawn to e5 by black. Tal attempts to break free. He hopes to force the queen away or to create the kind of tactical chaos he thrives in. But now Fischer surprises him. We have pawn captures on e5. Fischer's star move in this game. Tal has no choice. He has to capture the queen with his rook. Pawn captures on f6. Fischer sacrifices his queen. He knows that the resulting position is a technical win. In exchange for the queen, white has a rook and a devastating attack. Tal moves his queen to c5. The only one move Tal could play in this position. For example, if he plays queen to b6, then rook from h to f1 is coming, and white is winning easily. Back to our position. Now the white bishop captures on h7, black queen to g5, bishop captures on g8, Tal captures the pawn on f6. Tal has technically won the queen, but his position is lost. Bobby Fischer moves his rook from h1 to f1. The black queen captures on g7. White bishop captures on f7 with check. The black king has to move to d8. And now we have bishop to e6. Tal's position is almost completely paralyzed, and the end game, what is coming now, is hopeless. Black queen to h6. Bishop captures on d7. Black bishop recaptures. And now we have rook to f7. In this endgame we see two rooks versus a queen. White's rooks are much stronger than the queen, that is obviously. The black queen captures now on h2. Rook from d1 captures on d7. King to e8. Fischer will give some checks to gain time on the clock. We have rook from d to e7 with check. King to d8. Rook d7 check. King to c8. Rook c7 with check. King back to d8. Rook from f to d7 with check. King to e8. And now we have rook to d1. Fischer eliminates any chance of perpetual checks by defending his back rank. Now Tal moves his last pawn to b5. Rook to b7 by white. Queen to h5 by black. And now a very good move by Fischer. He plays pawn to g4. The black queen moves to h3. A beautiful deflection. If the queen captures the pawn, she abandons the defense of the back rank. For example, then we will have rook to h1, queen to d4, rook to h8 with check, queen captures on h8, and the white rook comes to b8 with check. And white is winning easily. Back to the game. We have now pawn to g5, queen to f3, rook to e1 with check, king to f8, white's rook captures on b5, king to g7, rook to b6, queen to g3, rook to d1, queen to c7, rook from d1 to d6, the black queen moves back to c8, we have pawn to b3 by Bobby Fischer, king to h7, rook to a6 by white, and here Mikhail Tal resigns. There is no defense against the combined power of the rooks and the advancing pawns. We saw Bobby Fischer's first victory against Mikhail Tal. This game announced to the chess world that Bobby Fischer was no longer only a prodigy. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this game, please give the video a like. See you at the next board. Bye for now, my friends.